just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other.
What's going on, Coach? Today I'm thinking about strategizing in business, some of the semantics around strategy, tactics, visions, missions, goals, legacy, outcomes. Lots of different ways of describing the same thing. I think oftentimes we get caught up using different words to describe the same thing, or using the same words to describe different things. And I believe it's important to have a clear vernacular and meaning in teams or in the ways that we're going to describe stuff. How often do you encounter that sort of thing with clients? Like where, I feel like I've got that thing already, like I've got the right vision, or I've got the right goal, or I've got the right outcome, I've got the right lag outcome, I've got the right action plan. Like, do you come up against this potential of mixing language?
Yeah, to me, what I see is when we create a game plan, right? We envision that future where we want to go. Then we carve it up into actionable steps to take steps forward. It's almost like the goal is to get to a point to where those action steps are just so natural and we fall into a rhythm. And as we know as coaches, it's also a very scary time to just fall into a rhythm, because what happens is your awareness begins to go away just a little bit, in a good way in some sense, in that we don't, when we fall into a routine, it's a routine that we've chosen for a reason. We get results from it, we make progress. That's also the time where life can get us, can blindside us, because we're not paying attention as much. We don't have as much awareness because we've fallen into this routine. So it's a bit of a catch-22. We want to get to that place where we have these regular actions that we're doing. And once that happens, we're liable to fall out of awareness with, are these the right things? We got to constantly come back to that first A, that awareness. Is this the right stuff? Are we getting results? Are we measuring in the right way?
Yeah. So cutting through the semantics of it, because that just makes more confusion, right? Like clarity is what we're looking for here. So if we agreed on the semantics, but even if it's clear about here's where we want to go, here's what we need to do, you constantly got to check to say, is this still the right thing to do? And that there's that dance between actually doing the thing to get to the result and then making sure that the thing that you're doing is actually giving you the result that you want. Am I getting that right?
Correct. Because when you first create it, it's your best guess that that's the way to do it. That's the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah. What's appropriate here, right? If you're trying to do this by yourself and going, okay, can I set this game up? Like you've got like a high level of autonomy that you're running your business, and you're thinking, okay, how do I set this up for myself? Like, what would be a good way of setting this up so you can check in with yourself?
Like are you asking once you've gotten to that routine place, or once you're running through the motions, how do you come back to awareness?
Yeah, because like you said, it starts off as an educated guess, and then what would be a good cadence or a good way of giving yourself an anchor to check into, so that you can make that, you can play that, you can be in that dance. Like, okay, did I do the thing, and then is the thing I'm doing the right thing still?
What I've had success with is journaling. I know we're both journalers, but what happens is usually the first couple sentence, paragraph, possibly two, are right on the top of my brain and easy to come up with. It's just like so easy to write it out on the paper. when I do that, what inevitably happens is that the next page comes out with like, oh, I didn't know that, or oh, I'm learning something about myself. So the way that we feel about something will be different than the way we felt when we first started it. So say 3, 4 weeks go by with a new routine, checking in with that journal tactic of how am I feeling about this yields all this information. It's where you get your feedback from the actions that you've attempted to do up until this point. And so that's an effective method for me, is to know what's actually going on. Because especially when we have busy lives or busy schedules, we just go from one thing to the next and we just get used to it. And then we make our peace with it. We just accept what's in our consciousness. And journaling for me is a way to constantly come back to what's actually going on here. How do I actually feel about this? And then what can I actually do about it?
Yeah, we make our peace, we accept it, but part of that is not an intentional acceptance. It's just you forget, you don't realize you're doing that. I think that's the danger of that. So specifically here, right? Again, if you're trying to do this yourself, journaling is a good way of opening up. That's what comes in your mind there. Would you say if you're gonna? I mean, if you're gonna journal every day, great. But if you're just like the first couple of things come out, just whatever's on top of your mind, would you specifically journal on the question of, am I doing the right activity to get to my business success right now? Like, will you do that
Mm.
once a week? Will you do that? Is it every day? Like, is there, because you can't be everywhere at once. If we're just talking about, okay, I've defined the most important outcome of my business right now. I've defined what I need to do that, and I'm doing it. How often do I need to check in on those two things through journaling? What do you recommend?
I would say as often as you feel uncomfortable. So that's my baseline, is that I try to do it every day. There's days where I'm not able to do it. But if I feel angry, frustrated, stuck, like these are all signs something's got to come out. there's some sort of growth opportunity for me just because of the negative, quote unquote, like just to assign a label to it, but just a negative emotion that I'm feeling. If I don't want to feel that, then I go feel it fully and understand what wisdom is in it that it's trying to tell me about.
And then how would you help on the other side of it, which is the make peace and acceptance without knowing that? Right. So would you also, so the cue, you said the cue is in the emotion, which is of course the emotions are cues for action. But if you've got, and so that's probably ironically easier when it's something you don't want to feel, right? Because, okay, cool, like that's my cue for action. Go get it out of my head, see what the deal is. But it could be anything. Might not just be that thing in your business. But on the opposite side of it, if you forget it, like, I'm just doing it. I'm doing it. I'm thinking about I'm doing it, but should it be once a week I come back to look at that particular thing just in case it's gone to that place where I've forgotten about it? Should it be every day? And should it be like a different thing than journaling in your overall life as well, right? What sort of specificity would you add?
That's a good question. I think any sort of structure to a journaling approach, I would definitely recommend, or else you're leaving it up to the whimsy of how you're actually feeling, which is not a bad thing either. But if you're looking to make progress in a particular area, I think a single question that's done repetitively, maybe once a week or a couple times a week, is super useful. And what I wrote down while you're kind of working your way through that and asking the question was, there's always a best version of ourselves, right? And sometimes we don't always live up to that, but there's a version in our minds that we can get to and understand, this person's great at business, this person's a great friend, whatever, right? And sometimes we fall short of that best version. So the question I wrote down as a reflection question is, which standard of that version of myself have I violated?
Hmm.
Which standard have I made peace with underneath what I wouldn't normally tolerate if I were the best version of myself? And all of a sudden these answers will come through with like, well, and the excuses as well. It had to be that way, or this person said this, so I had to comply with what they wanted. And all of a sudden you're getting to the root of how you made your peace with these things that are maybe less than what you would ideally accept if you were in your highest version of yourself.
It's so cool because it's across yourself. We often say that you take yourself wherever you go. And so I started this by talking about a specific outcome and goal from a business perspective. But ultimately, you're pulling it back to say that I've got to ask myself a question about me because
Yes.
because that ultimately that I'm the conduit.
Yeah.
How do you, if you wanted to keep it directive to a part of your life, so looking at you holistically in that place, but then a directive to your business, or it could be anything else, but like in this example, how do you handle that?
Okay, so I want to make progress with my business, for example, and maybe I feel stuck, or maybe I've accepted a standard lower than what my highest version of myself would accept. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. So if my starting point was I've decided that I know what my outcome is that I want in my business this year.
Hmm.
I've decided that I know the action to take to get there, but I also know that that could change at any point, and or I could forget that to do that or forget that I'm doing it the right way. So I need a check to know I'm in the dance. And then we said, okay, well, journaling is a great thing to do that, uh, but because it's holistic, because how can it be anything else? Because it's you, it could put you down a road which does deal with things at ultimately a higher level of you. But how do we make sure that the rubber meets the road and we actually come back to the point of the first place and go, okay, like,
Mm,
oh, how can I pull it all the way back down and just check that I'm in the dance, I'm doing the right things for my business to get to my outcome?
sure. Yeah, and I think the the way that I've answered so far is because when I show up to my business connections, whether that's client calls or prospect meetings or whatever, whatever energy I've worked on for myself is what I show up with my clients. So to your point, like how does this actually manifest to where we are making progress with what we actually want to make progress with? What I would say to that is um, almost a similar thing to how I answered earlier is like what do I feel off about when I have these connections, or where do I feel stuck? And inevitably I'll get emotional answers or things that I'm putting out, but I'll arrive to a point to where I get to ask the question I'm really trying to ask myself, and then creativity comes out. So I think this is ultimately where it leads to, is that new ideas, new things to try, new people to connect with, inevitably come up where maybe I didn't see that in the original setting of my outlook, my plan. So I think as time goes by, it's a huge catalyst to continue to ask these questions, to reflect holistically, but then to come up with a slight tweak of a game plan and then be totally committed to it. Still not knowing if it's the right thing, but using the information I've garnered from the past month of experience, and maybe falling short of where I had hoped, but trying something new, a tweaked version of what I originally set out for.
Yeah. So it's like I'm listening to this podcast right now that is talking about sleep. Like uh, it's a series of podcasts, but he often refers to as sleep, like the different places, light sleep. There's stage 2, stage 3, REM, non-REM sleep, and deep sleep loss. There's like four or so, I think that's right. But he often describes it as going up and down and in a elevator. Or you can't just go from the top floor to the bottom floor. You've got to go past the other floors on the way there. And so that analogy sticks with me. It's analogous for this because it seems the same thing, right? We're going to the bottom floor of, okay, I can get out and walk around, which is doing the action to get to the outcome of my business. But in order to see if I'm doing the right thing, I've got to go through all the other floors of my being, of myself, to explore, to ask myself questions at the highest level of myself in order to take it all the way back down again through those different levels to apply it. Does that resonate for you, Coach?
Yes.
Yeah. So to pull it all together for me, right? What would you say is the soundbite or tactic that someone listening could use to apply this? And overall, and what I mean by this is, okay, if I know that I'm doing it myself, right, and the purpose of this is that I'm doing it myself, which is much more challenging, right? But
Hmm.
but much more challenging. It's I've decided that I've got an outcome my business want to go to, that I'm going to take this action, and the what we're suggesting is the best route to look after yourself, to check in the right cadence, is going to be through this process of journaling. What would you say would be the thing to someone to take away, to go, okay, and this is what I need to remind myself of, or put it all down, distill it down for me?
Just articulate it. Articulate the way that you feel about what's happening. Stop making agreements with things that you no longer want to accept. I think we as human beings are very poor communicators, especially to ourselves. I mentioned doing this ourselves. The way that we actually feel about something. We mentioned this in prior episodes, that feelings are so subtle, and we only get like the first chance as soon as we feel them to dive into them. So that's my soundbite, is to articulate it. What is actually going on? Like, try to put it to words, what's happening here, and you'll ultimately come up with frustrations or stuckness. Or, I met with a fellow coach this morning. That's what we talked about. He wasn't getting results externally. He could feel himself gripping and really being attached to a desired outcome. And I asked him, well, how is his own development going? Like, what do you have? When's the last time that you journaled? How do you feel about this? And he hadn't in a while. So that was my advice to him, was to, if you're noticing something in your external that's not going great, sure, you can change your action, but the shortcut to getting results more quickly is to change the way that you're showing up to the actions that you're taking anyway. And I think that's a faster way to get what you want, even if you do end up changing the actions, than just changing the actions.
Yeah,
Show up differently, show up better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so here's my distinction to take away from that, is that, yeah, you can change your action, but it requires willpower. And you change your action, you might even get a different result, but it's likely to be short-lived because it won't feel good, because you didn't change something upstream from that as well.
Yeah, we're looking for the ultimate alignment of it feeling good, of us having the clarity that this is the right action as much as we can, getting the results, and then making the tweaks, but just constantly staying in tune with, like, for me, one last final soundbite. How can this be fun? I want it to be fun. If it's going to be fun, it better be with people that I enjoy being around, that we see eye to eye, that we have common interests. I don't want it any other way. I don't want to force business down people's throat. I want it to be so natural and easy that we're having fun along the way. It's got to be fun for me.
Yeah, and as always, right, it's never any fun if you're not having fun. So, make sure you're always having fun, right? But so if you're not thinking about it, you don't tend to have it, right? Because the default expression is, like, expectation as being an adult is like, you got to take things seriously.
Bingo. See you next week.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction, so please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.